Do
Oh,
you mind?
okay. No, no, I don't mind. The fact you told me is good enough. Yeah,
Okay.
I thought once you're settled, I can see you in your new.
Okay, that's
Okay,
perfect.
there you are. It's been a few years, Roland.
Yes.
So, how do you like it in Wales instead of London?
Well, good question. Uh, well, London was a stressful environment. It was. I think my health was going on the decline. So
Oh,
moving
yes.
to Wales suddenly made things much better and easier, and my health improved dramatically. I think is and then the life is more relaxed, and I could write full time on my books. For
Right,
now, I'm not sure how long I can do that, but and I just
right.
published finally the New Age Physics. I can actually show it to you. Boop.
Oh,
So that's
congratulations.
it's
Yes.
quite the big break,
Oh, that's
and
great.
that's the other version. Boop, and this is the back,
Excellent.
and that's based on the book of Mark McCutcheon,
Mhm.
which is um, the final theory, as you can see.
You introduced Matt McCutcheon his writings to me quite a while back, and I've looked at some of it, but I too, I'll admit, I've been so busy that it's just been a whirlwind, and I'm working to finish my first book about Rendlesham, really more about what happened and transpired after the initial Christmas event situation. Excuse me. As you may know, the Rendlesham incident is like, without comparison, the Roswell incident in the United States, and
Yeah, can you remind me, was there any kind of nuclear weapons involved in that one, where they kind of stopped the nuclear weapons from starting, or they turned them offline or something?
they didn't do either. But the crafts that were um, viewing and or using, a type of light mechanism to scan the nuclear ordnance that was on base has never really been fully understood. Yet there were witnesses to the account. The colonel, the deputy base commander, and I are connected as well. And Chuck Halt, he's retired in his 80s, and he supported it. So my friend Peter Robbins, who resides in New York, was the initiator to put me in contact with a number of people. And I did get clearance finally to view the back part of the base that was, that is still classified technically. And I mean, movie makers, directors, and people are, flying in and out of there with their own stories, as you're familiar from when you were involved with Contact. Um, so for me, I thought it was going to be more of a tour in 2016 when Peter and I got together, I think in the end of 2014, and started chatting. And one of his best friends is Richard Dolan. If I'm dropping names on purpose to help remind you, possibly. Um, so as it developed, and when Peter gave me some contacts to see when I got to England, it became bigger than life, and it has for the last 7 years. So there's a lot that was happening there. They had nuclear ordnance on the base, but to answer your question, none was used in the encounters. There was actually no form of weaponry used at all.
No, no,
Um,
of course. I
right.
meant they were able to kind of fiddle with things at a distance, something.
They no, they couldn't really, or there was no evidence that they fiddled with anything. And when I returned from Las Vegas last week, there's an Air Force friend who was the officer at the time, and he helped the how do you put the tower people who were officers in control of the alarm system in case someone did fiddle with the nukes. There were a couple of emergencies, but nothing ever went wrong, which is a good thing because I've been very vocal about it, that I was still am shocked that they had nuclear ordnance that was live, that was within 1 or so miles of where people actually lived, residents. And it happens in a number of places around the world, but this was quite interesting. So I interviewed a number of people in England, and that's part of the book. And I still have people wanting to contribute, which is a blessing, as you would know, in its own. Um, so it's not physics like in your realm, but that is an area of which I have much interest. So um, it's been very interesting. It became part of my life, pretty much after you and I had talked. And your marginal and your expansion theory I found to be very interesting. And more that I've learned, I could say it supports it in a lot of ways because time and space are definitely mutable, and our viewpoint, our perspective, and or our involvement in whichever dimensions we are involved are of substance, not of trickery or anything else, in my opinion. So, um, that what I've completed are finishing up transcriptions, and the book started with a number. It's actually a compilation that I'm featuring Rendlesham, but it's a compilation of case studies I performed over the last 7, 8 years. And these are people who have come forward with their experiences. And that's the thrust of my first book. I've written 3, but I've only looked to publish this one first. And I have a publisher who's a good friend in Texas. So that, in line with my Universal Digest being a WordPress site for many years, which helped me pull my hair out because the first website I wrote was in code and it was basic. And then when I got involved with doing my own web development, it became so time consuming that I couldn't write in a lot of arenas. So there you have it, kind of where I'm at the moment. I now have a new web host, but Universal Digest has been around since 2015. And I've written over 500 articles and only have about a repopulation of 29 on the website. And it's HTTPS, / universaldigest.com. And so in retirement, that's become my main project, so to speak. And when you and I got back into contact, and the fact that you have finished your books, I have the flexibility to, after we catch up, to gladly write an article and base our interview that we'll have on Universal Digest YouTube to back it up with what you and I put together after I read your 2 chapters of, is it one of the books, or do you want me to read both of the books?
I think if you read the first 2 chapters of my book, you will have a good idea of what my book is about. But if you were to read the 3rd chapter, it's actually a summary of the book, The Final Theory by Mark McCutcheon.
Okay.
So actually, that actually would be a very good thing. By reading those, because the first 2 chapters are basically just summaries of the book, yeah.
Okay.
And the first chapter, they're very short chapters. They're not that long. They were meant to be as short as possible, but they became a bit longer than I thought they would be. They started as they're supposed to be only 300 words.
Right.
How to explain my old theories in 300 words.
So, my gosh, I don't see how you could.
No, exactly. It's just it's so large. It encompasses the whole of physics. And not just the whole of physics, but as well, every kind of unexplained phenomena that we have encountered in life, in
Right.
physics, unexplained phenomena, like precisely, Rendlesham and these lights that seems to be going faster than light and things like that. So I think I've got many answers to offer. At the very least, they are theories, but they're probably the best theories, well, that I can find, because I've been thinking about this for a long time, since I was 10 years old, really. Einstein's and all his theories about space-time and how it doesn't seem to work. So that's my answer to it, and it's a book that took me like probably 40 years to write, because
Yeah.
this is when I was starting to think about it, and more seriously the last 10 years. And then for the last 3 years, it's been since 2018. So yeah, for the last 3 years, it's been nonstop every day, and I worked. It's very difficult to finish a book. It's like I can see that you're writing your book, and I understand exactly what you're going through. It's
Yes.
so much work, and it's full time. You've got to work all day, otherwise you'll never finish it. And then if you publish it yourself as well, and then as you say, I have not updated my websites in ages. I'm not even to say that these books are out. It's like, because I had three books really I wanted to get out at the same time, because they all touch on the theory, to a certain extent. The destructivism, the path to self-destruction, is philosophical, and there's a section about metaphysics,
Mhm.
which talks about that. I repeat in there the first chapter of New Age physics, and there is also Anna Maria, which is science fiction, paranormal science fiction novel, but at the same time, it's all based on these new ideas and new technologies. So I had to have these three books ready at the same time, and then I'm going to film myself reading these books on YouTube, and then as well put any interviews like the ones we're preparing.
Mhm.
I want to put it online, and if there's anything interesting I'm saying here, I might take some excerpts and add them there, or I don't know, make a video out of it, or so. I don't know. So it's like anything that talks about my theories and explains exactly how it works. Um, Basically try to put it on my website and see, on YouTube, and see if it works.
Oh,
But
excellent. Okay. Uh,
so just to explain to you the theory, um, because they're all just models of the universe, and it's going to be very difficult to get people to accept this, because it's so different from what existed before. But if the model is the best one there is, then that I can explain everything, then it's got to be true, or at the very least that becomes the best theory we've got, over Einstein and Newton. And so there is a good way to see gravity as a way that if everything expands in the background that we cannot see because we are also expanding. If things are were expanding right now at a constant rate, you couldn't see it because you're expanding as well. So that's how it all works. And if everything expands, all the distance between the objects reduces constantly, because space does not expand as well. So, but only the objects expands. So we only see the result of the expansion that is actually only happening behind the scenes, and that is why objects get closer together. So that's what gravity is, in Mark McCutcheon, the final theory. And then this is the first type of expansion and contraction of matter that can explain part of physics, gravity, you know. And the second one is, if you check, is the expansion and contraction, but of the electrons. But in this case, we talk about growing, or and then shrinking, instead of expansion and contraction, because they kind of grow and they shrink, and they constantly do that on top of actually expanding, at a constant rate behind the scene, like all matter. And this actually can explain magnetism, because it's always a whole big strings of all electrons that actually can reduce in size when they are in contact with other that are smaller, and then they can actually grow in size when they are freely expanding and they're not in contact with other ones. And then if they are totally free, they actually free from matter, then they actually freely expand into space. And then this is what so if you've got two walls of all these kind of electrons side by side, then you got the static electricity. And then if actually they grow, then actually you've got a repelling force. And if they are actually shrinking, then you've got an attractive force. But this is not the same as gravity. This is on top of gravity. But that explains Coulomb's attracting and repelling forces, a big kind of walls of electrons between objects, magnetic fields, and then there are clouds of electrons, basically. And then when they are freely expanding into space, then there are clusters of electrons. So you've got kind of bigger balls. Instead of clouds, they are balls. And then these clusters of electrons are light. And depending on their size, and depending on how many are passing, you've got the intensity of the light, and you've got what type of light it is, the color or frequency of the light. So this is basically the contribution of Mark McCutcheon on his book The Final Theory, and this is that explains gravity, electromagnetism, and also explains the two other forces of nature, which is the the strong nuclear force. Because if if objects are only expanding, then you don't need any kind of special nuclear force inside the atom to keep everything together, because they are expanding against each other and they are pushed against each other. So that's the strong nuclear force explained as well. And then there is the last one, which is the weak nuclear force, which is not really related, but it's just that everything is made of electrons. As soon as you accept this idea that everything is made of electrons, then it's the weak nuclear force simply that when you've got a neutron, it actually just it's unstable, and then an electron is being popped out, or a few, I don't know, and then it becomes a proton. So this is what the radiation is. This is what the weak nuclear force is. So all there we've got to explain all four forces of nature. So that's Mark McCutcheon. That the two, what I call the two first type of expansion and contraction of matter to explain physics. And then the third one is actually where it becomes interesting for you, because this is what explains parallel worlds, or um, multidimensional worlds, worlds
Right.
of different densities. So it's the growth and the shrinking of the electrons as well as before, to explain clouds and clusters. But instead, it happens within the atoms. And so when it happens within the atoms, what happens is that the atoms themselves grow in size, and then the spacing between the molecules and the atoms is also getting larger. But instead of being a gas, a gas is just molecules are the same size, they're just like getting more excited and bouncing against each other, and then they are kind of spaced out more of the same, unless they get more excited. But if you actually if the rate at which the electrons are orbiting are getting faster, and they are growing as well, then you get bigger atoms and bigger molecules, and then they keep their molecular structure, and we can't see it anymore. It's no longer part of our reality. So this is what an interdimensional world is. It's still physical. It's still made of atoms and molecules, and but they are larger or smaller, and because visible light in our range of vision is very limited, we can only see certain frequencies. You can see it very easily with insects and then birds. They move much faster than us. They're actually, I've got one flying around here, 250 hertz. And per second, or I don't know,
There are
250
higher
hertz.
vibrational forces involved.
Yeah, and we are actually vibrating at 50 hertz or 60 hertz.
It's 60
And
hertz.
so for us, the insects are in a different dimension. They are they are basically they have 4 times more time than us. They can do 4 times more in the same amount of time than we can. That's why they can move very fast compared to us before we can actually kill them. Because for them, they're moving fast forward from our point of view. And if you look at tortoises, they actually move in slow motion. You can look at them, they look very slow, but from their point of view, actually, they move at a normal rate. And so
Yeah.
they are also a different dimension. They vibrate at 15 hertz, I think. So that's exactly how it goes. And if you look at them flying around, if they fly a bit too fast, they become invisible. You can't see them anymore.
Yep.
So, and then they reappear when they stop, and they move exactly like UFOs, which is very interesting, like in
Indeed.
zigzags or right angles, and it's very strange. You can look at it, and this is more perception on our part because they are made of matter that is actually larger molecule, larger atoms, and what happens there is that the density is much less, and the density is less dense than normal air or molecules in the air.
Hmm.
But the only way they can actually just float is that it's about the same density as the air. And if you've got a balloon full of helium, it goes up in the sky
Hmm.
above what is denser because the helium is less dense than air. And if you got a balloon on the water, it's the same thing. It goes to the top of the water
Hmm.
because it's less dense than the water because there's air in it. So this is how they can basically do anti-gravity, and this whole process can be completely silent because all they need to do is to adjust the speed at which their particles are orbiting, and the faster they orbit, then the higher the frequency, and the slower they orbit, the lower the frequency. The faster, for me, not for Mark McCutcheon, but for me, the electrons, there is also neutrinos. Ugh, there's so much to say. uh, the neutrinos. Okay, let's start there. A solar system is basically an electron for me. Now, you might say, no, 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 this has been disproven before, but they were comparing a solar system to an atom. It's not an atom, it's an electron. So an electron is actually, a bunch of little particles, orbiting each other. It's exactly like, and these particles are neutrinos, in my opinion, and that's why they are neutral because they cannot attract or repel anything because they are just components of inside an electron, and it's the interaction between the electrons that actually make them capable of pushing back on something or attracting something, as I said before, because they are all interconnected, and they are interconnected because they exchange neutrinos between them, which like it's like a whole bunch of solar systems interconnected together through orbiting planets. But I'm not talking about the 8 or 9 planets we have. These planets will be much further away. We would have not seen them yet, although I think we have identified a few planets that are outside solar systems, and the atoms are basically galaxies. And so I've looked at this, and I cannot fault this. I'm sure some people that are still within standard physics will think these are ridiculous ideas. But if you forget everything and you get back to the most basic things, you can see that this actually can work. And if they were to apply themselves and try to say, okay, this is it now, let's try to prove this, or see if it works, I think they would see that it does work. And so now that that galaxies are atoms, you can see that galaxies together must be interconnected, and they must be linked together through rogue solar systems that are orbiting between each other, but very far from the visible galaxies, and to form cosmic molecules at a higher scale. So you can see that this very small is identical to the very large, and the same laws of physics apply. The only difference that is at a different scale. And when you talk about gravity, is that the solar systems are all expanding at a constant rate, like all galaxies are. And so, whatever they compose at a higher scale, like cosmic molecules, they also expand. But because they are orbiting, and it's a whole adjustment of orbits between stars, solar systems, moons, and then, they are interconnected together and they counteract the gravity. But if you had 10 solar systems all interlinked together with planets, and then the planets suddenly started to go to orbit much faster because there's more matter, because there's now maybe there were 5 solar systems before, but now there are 10. Then all the planets will start orbiting much faster, but also the orbit will change and they will be much larger, and so all the solar systems would actually space out. And this is what a repulsing or repelling force is in Coulomb when you look at electrons. And if suddenly 5 solar systems were destroyed, then the contrary, they would actually orbit much slower, and then they will all kind of shrink together, and would be an attracting force. And when in Coulomb, when in static electricity all goes, it's because all the solar system suddenly poof, all the orbits are destroyed, and then at this point everything goes in every direction, and they are no longer linked together in orbits. So 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 that's what I was trying to explain was, I was explaining all that to get back to my original ideas, uh, to explain how. Okay, so basically, I'm not sure, but let's get back to a UFO and how they can float in the air. So they've got their molecules, or they are a bit larger, a bit less dense than our molecule of air, or about the same, and they can just adjust the speed at which the neutrinos are orbiting, and so that actually defines the size of the electrons and their speed. And then if it all enlarge, then they move into higher dimensions. If it all shrinks, then they move into lower dimensions. And so it's all physical for them. Their world, the four-dimensional or four-density world, is exactly the same as us. You would find yourself in a four-dimensional world, and you would not see any difference from what you see right now. Maybe things are a bit less solid, more malleable, but it's still a physical world. And from our perspective, anyway, definitely it's less solid, and it looks more like a gas and more malleable. Even metals and things. But they can come to our dimensions, as you can see when there are UFO sightings. But they still can. Oh yeah, they can still go faster than the speed of light. Let me explain how that's possible. Um, so yeah, so if they can go faster than the speed of light, how did they do this? Yeah, okay. So that was the third expansion and contraction of matter to explain physics. And now there is the fourth one. Now, the fourth one is that this world is more psychological in nature than anything else. And, there's a whole chapter in my book about that to explain why it's psychological. It's all an interpretation of the brain. You receive these particles through your eyes, and your brain interprets what it is. Because at the end, we know it's all just particles. It's just like balls. Why do we see what we see? It's an interpretation of the brain. So the brain is kind of like a biological computer, if you want. But in the end, it's a psychological reality. That's why some people don't see ghosts and some others do see them. They vibrate at the right frequency to be able to see them, and to interact with them. So it's all a question of how fast your particles are going at. And so if you and there are lower dimensions, probably where all the kind of evil beings are, if you want, where they are very heavy, very dense, where the particles are running very slow and they move in slow motion as well. So, time is still relative in that sense, that it runs slower in the lower dimensions and faster in the higher dimensions. So, for a UFO, in the space of one of our day, it can be many years for them, depending on where they are on the scale. It can also be just almost like ours, but we all share the same space. Like all the gases in the atmospheres are intermingling together, or kind of maybe live separated or mixed or whatever. But it's all in the same space. And if you vibrate faster, then you will see something different, and you can interact with these things different. Like birds. If you look at a bird, when it moves its head, it's like a jerk move. You cannot see the full movement. But if the insects, when they kind of disappear, if you were yourself having your particles going faster, you would be able to see them completely. They would never disappear. So, and your time, you would be able to achieve much more as well in the day's work, than some colleagues. And there are some people that can achieve a lot of work in very small amount of time. And I always wondered how it was possible, because I always thought I was working very fast, but I've met people who can work extremely fast. And I was wondering about how that was possible, but it's just, if their particles are moving faster, they've got more time to do the same amount of work. From their point of view, they're probably not working any faster than I or you. It's just a question that your particles are moving faster.
Some of the this is very interesting, and because of the experience I've had since you and I first met, well over 10 years ago at least. My first experience was actually in the state of Georgia, near Atlanta, Georgia, and near Dobbins Air Force Base. And I was using my telescope for night vision of the Echo satellite, etc. And without adulterating what you're saying, I want to go along with it in this interview that not only did I see the zigzagging of the craft as it approached from the area of the moon into our atmosphere, and over a span of about 5-6 seconds, it moved in different, very intelligent directions. And when it left, it was a blur of light. It wasn't just a dot that disappeared. So it was going at such a rate of speed that I could view it, but only as a straight line of light. Because, like you said about the bird's head moving fast as a jet. Now
Uh,
it's
I'll explain something to you in a minute about that. But let me finish the 5 different type of expansion and
oh, okay,
contraction
sure.
matter.
Oh,
So
oh,
if in a world that is psychological, no, that's very interesting. I'm glad you mentioned that because I had a similar experience, and that's actually quite. I can explain it.
and
So
I'll add psychological is also metaphysical in our dimension.
yes, but people also talk that we're living in a virtual reality, or a reality made of holograms, or more like a computer, whatever. It doesn't matter whether it's biological and psychological, or a virtual reality. There's one thing there that is very interesting, is that in such a world, there's no distance. However you want to look at it, there is no distance. So how do you explain this? So if there is no distance, and some UFO seems to pop out of here and reappear
Right.
in no time somewhere else very quickly, or people have been snatched off the earth and they reappear near the destination or somewhere else on the planet extremely like almost instantly, is that there is no distance, and this is true. When something moves away from you in the distance, it only shrinks in appearance from your point of view. And when it comes towards you, it just grows. But it's all an optical illusion. They don't really,
Mhm.
become smaller or larger, but it's all we see it because it's all psychological. It's exactly like on a computer. If you've got two objects coming towards each other on a computer, they are not really covering a distance. All they do is that they're getting larger or they're getting smaller. And I don't know why nobody thought of that before, because it's so obvious. And there are a lot of people who are working on these computers and 3D kind of constructions, and that's all they do all day, trying to figure out how to, make these things pretend that they're actually covering distances to just making them bigger or smaller compared with others. And even then, they did not realize or thought that maybe reality worked the same. And so, because, nothing is really real at the end of the day. So, when objects are moving, you can go faster than the speed of light many times over, because all you have to do is shrink or expand to where you want to go. And that depends on the frequency at which your particles are orbiting everywhere within you or your ship. So, the faster they go, the faster you can actually shrink or expand to the faster they go, the faster you can expand, and the slower they go, the faster you can actually shrink to whatever dimension that you want to go to. And we haven't, figured that out yet, but there are ways to do this, probably through technology, through thoughts, and that explains the psychic mediums and the people, the ships as well. So when I was a kid, funny enough, there was so that was the fifth one. The fourth one is the psychological reality, where
Okay.
the whole reality expands instantly out of your mind every time you open your eyes, and then is being replenished exactly like a computer screen is with electrons constantly. So, and the fifth one is actually the fact that all matter just expands or grows in size or shrinks from your point of view as they move. So and it's an optical illusion. But so there's not really any kind of distance being covered. So there are no distance in the universe. And so when I was a kid, I saw a UFO, and it was a very weird day. It was all icy that day, and there was an electric central electricity station nearby, and I don't know what happened there. Whether the UFO was over that, I don't know. And then suddenly all the electric cables outside on the streets, they all became yellow and very bright and like electric shocks in it. So I'm not sure what they've done over that station, but then we lost electricity. And then I was with a friend, and then we saw that kind of ball of light in the sky, and then suddenly it went from, from right to left very quickly. I don't think it was even going at the speed of light, but it went very quickly. But as it went very quickly, it multiplied in many, many balls of light, and then they started to disappear as it moved to that place. And once it was there, right angle, poof, then it disappeared into the distance. Now it's very interesting. Why would we see so many different balls of light? There was only one chip, but it was going so fast that we could see many of them. So now in atomic expansion theory, light is now made of clusters of electrons, as I said earlier, instead of photons. Photons are intangible things. They are most like more energy than matter. In atomic expansion theory, everything is made of matter. There is no energy per se. Energy is just the movement of matter. Yeah. So I'm sure you have probably many ideas, and they are probably they probably are compatible when we look at it more closely. But these are just ways to explain things. It's a model, and it can be interpreted differently. But if light is matter, and it's made of clusters of electrons, and then they travel, to people. So, and when there is a source of light, there are a lot of clusters of electrons that emanate from that source of light, and whatever is actually electrons being freed from atoms or molecules, or through eating an element, like metal bars or something, or a light basically. So it all these clusters of electrons are coming towards you, and then many of them, and every time you see these kind of clusters, you see something. But if it moves so fast, then what happens is that all at the same time, all these clusters are being sent at the same time, and in your eyes they all arrive at the same time, although because it moved too fast, you get many more than you usually would if the object was moving at a normal speed. So you basically, if you were in space and you were going towards the sun that was exploding, if you were going faster than light, you would see it and fast forward. And if you were going the other direction, you would actually see it in slow motion. You will see it explode in slow motion. So this is what the Einstein idea, all these ideas come from. What would happen if I follow a beam of light, and he says that the beam of light would freeze unless the speed of light is, relative. And if you, as soon as you reach the end or the speed of light, what happens is that light still goes on the speed of light in front of you because it's relative, and because he's linked space and time together. And not only that, but also with energy and mass, and everything is relative. Now, in my books, this is not true anymore. Time is constant everywhere. It's no longer relative within our own dimension.
Okay, within our own dimension, that's key.
Yeah,
Thank
and then as soon as your particles are moving faster, you start moving it fast forward. But it's still the same time. It's just that you can do more in the same amount of time that people who move in slow motion. So so in that way, time is still kind of something that doesn't really exist, more a convention, and still constant if you want, even through there are ways to interpret all these things. It can still be constant across the dimension. It's just that people are vibrating faster, moving faster, doing more in the same amount of time. Because the planets that are moving around the sun, they are moving at the same speed, whether you are in this dimension or higher dimension. Because if it was not the case, we could not be sharing the same space.
you.
So for them, a year might pass in one afternoon for us, but if they are in the fifth dimension, I don't know. But at the same time, their planets would have not gone faster around the sun during that time. It would have been the same. So otherwise, we couldn't be sharing the same space. So 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 that's how I explain the ship that you explained earlier. That the multiple lights that you can see is that light now are clusters of electrons. They take time to get somewhere, and the speed of light for me now is not only variable, but it's also relative, because the speed of light, what is relative is what can be made of matter that moves. It's motion that can be relative, and that was the special relativity of Einstein. So people
Oh,
will see different things from different point of view because it takes time for light to get somewhere, those
right.
clusters of electrons. So that's why, but at the same time, all of this is an optical illusion. There's only one event, the sun exploding, and it happens at a specific time. Time is constant, but people who are nearer it will see it earlier, and the people who are further away will see it later. So that's what is relative. Einstein linked it all together and said that instead of being an optical illusion, it was reality. So he says that the sun explodes at different time for different people,
Hmm.
but it explodes basically multiple times. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, you're going from an aspect that time is a constant in our dimension, to which I can comprehend and agree, whereas Albert Einstein, with his magical formula, which is not so magic, but energy is equal to the constant of the speed of light as a constant squared to mass. So those two combined together equals energy. And you're coming at it from time being a constant and everything else is moving in its own specific time and course in its own dimension. So the key part that I'm gaining now from what I've been hearing is that we're looking at time being the constant and all things that are energetic, because the law of conservation of matter and energy is a constant, because it can't be destroyed or created. It can only be changed. And
Yes.
right. So therefore, it matches a few things that I've experienced in the work that I've done over the last few years. That whether it's Dr. Michio Kaku's string theory, where he's purports about 11 dimensions right now.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
right. I must explain something very important to you.
okay.
When I'm talking about different dimensions, we're talking about the dimension of the particles.
Hmm.
It's that's all. It's not kind of weird dimensional geometric forms like hyperspheres or hypersquares or things like that. This is not what is meant, and that's why it's actually synonymous to density, another world density, or another dimensional world. You can see that it's synonymous. The difference is the dimension of the matter and the density of matter. If it's more spaced out and less dense, then it can float up or down, and then it becomes invisible to us, and it's another physical reality. And if it's more dense and slow motion, then again, there's a point, beyond the tortoises, that we can't see it anymore. We can't interact with it. And there are these kind of spirits that are more like shadowy, black shadows, and these are extremely, extremely dense. And I don't know, they in the second dimensional world or first, I don't know. It's like, and there's maybe an infinite amount of it. And so so basically, what I'm saying is that, as interesting as it is, superstring theories, and there are interesting ideas there that are actually even inspired me at some point to get to my conclusions, but they cannot have the real physics. And neither is Einstein, neither is Newton, and neither is quantum mechanics. And this is all replaced now with atomic expansion theory. And that's why, if we can get these books known, and people to consider this, it will be great. But it's very difficult to convince any kind of physicist to read anything else that is outside standard physics. It's impossible. So it will only come through people like us.
And I agree with you because, if anything, the experiences that have brought me to this point in time in my existence has done nothing more than to open my mind and to free it to all possibilities. Because number one, and I've written this, that nothing happens by accident. There's purpose in everything. Number two is, however your perspective is of our universe, um, it can be viewed many different ways and still be correct, in my opinion, from what I've seen. Did I give you the chance to finish your 5 points?
Yeah, but there's so many things that as we continue to
Oh,
speak, I'm sure you wanted to speak about EMC square, for example. I can explain to you what this is. It's very simple. It's, before Einstein, well before Einstein, there was there was an equation to measure the kinetic energy of objects, and that equation was E equal one or over two, a fraction, half. Yeah, gosh, I don't even know what to in English to say this, but it was E equal half, one over two, um, m for mass, v for speed, square. And so all Einstein did was actually it's it's just they got the equation for the kinetic energy of an object, how much it has energy because it moves. So, the faster it moves, the higher the impact it would have, on an object that it hits. Or the slower it moves, the less energy it would have. So this is all this is. And even that, Einstein got it wrong because E equal mc square. C square is just the speed of light, and light, as I just explained, is made of matter.
Mhm.
So as you can see, it's more or less c square. But as I said earlier, the speed of light is not constant. The speed of light is actually, variable, and not only that, most likely it accelerates because the space between objects reduces as to the inverse square of the inverse square equation of Newton's, if you remember. The
Mhm.
faster it accelerates the distance between objects, that reduces as an acceleration. So the speed of light is exactly that. They are expelled outside the atoms and the molecules at a very high speed, which is most of the speed of light. But once they are freely expanding into space, then they accelerate because but not that much compared with the massive speed that they got just to be able to get out of the electrons and the atoms, which is most of its speed. But then once the source of light has made its light, for example, on Mars, then it comes to Earth, then that light accelerates to us. But it is slowed down along the way by matter encounters, gases in space, magnetic fields, and everything. So it's at the end, it might not accelerate that much. It dissipates as well in every direction. So by the time it reaches us, maybe it doesn't accelerate so much, or it has been slowed down. But technically, it's gravity. The speed of light is now gravity. You calculate how long it takes for something that is here to get to here when actually they are expanding, and that's what the distance between them reduces as. So E equal mc square is the matter of the light, the clusters of electrons, and how fast they can actually they can reduce the distance between where they were originated from and their destination. That's why it's an acceleration. But you know, Einstein, the way E equal mc square is at the moment is if it is reflected when actually the clusters of electrons hit a mirror or a building made of mirror, or they are reflected back, and the impact is twice more because they bounce back at the exact with the exact same energy as before. But if you've got a building made of cement, poof, it's only one. This is where the half is divided by two because it's not reflected. So by getting rid of this fraction of a half of one divided by two, one half basically, um, it is given the equations for fully reflected matter. So when the bomb explodes, it would have to all the clusters of electrons and clouds of electrons that get out of there of the atoms, they would have to be fully reflected through mirrors, through walls of mirrors. So the real equation should be one half of mc square, and c, which is a constant, but it's not a constant because it's variable. And even Einstein admit that, because speed of light is only constant in a vacuum. But try to find me a vacuum on this universe, and
It's
I'll be very
almost
surprised. There are no vacuums. There's always
right. I agree
particles.
with
There
you.
are neutrinos. There, so, and even then, it's even outside, even within a vacuum, I would say that the speed of light would not be constant because since it's matter going into space, there's no difference between clusters of electrons traveling in space and asteroids traveling in space. And what happens when asteroids goes near the sun, but still going too fast to actually hit the sun? They go into a partial orbit around it and then continue on their way. And the light, since it's going so fast, it's exactly what happens. And light is deflected because light is affected by gravity. And so this is all the expansion of the sun and the expansion of the particles, which that explains the distance reduction between them. And this is what the gravitational lensing effect is all about. And that was used to prove Einstein, when quite the opposite. You can see now that you can explain it in a different way and it doesn't prove Einstein anymore. So light is at a different place in space from where we see it, but it's because the light itself has moved and walks in paths like that because it is deflected by expanding objects around it that moves it. Because that this kind of thing has a real impact on motion. This is why motion is relative. You can have a star exploding very far from us in the universe, and then you see it twice when it arrives here because one path of light has gone around the sun, another big kind of sun on that way, and the other one went on the other way, and suddenly they are in two different paths. And then this one has encountered a lot of gases or magnetic fields on our way here, and there may be 5 years difference between those two things of light, these two beams of light, that shows a same event that happened at the same time very far away. So E equal mc square, yeah, it was great that it could explain from it. I don't know how they actually made nuclear weapons, but at the end of the day, it was just a kinetic energy of motion of matter, any kind of matter. And since light is now matter, then we can see why it works like that.
Thank you. I hope I didn't digress by bringing up the formula, because we know that time and space are mutable. And in case there are viewers to this recording,
Mutable.
yeah, mutable, it can change.
Okay.
Okay. What you're stating is that everything is matter. And let's face it, in the conservation laws of matter and energy, matter is matter, energy is energy. So for the layman, I'm trying to state that the uniqueness of your theory is you're taking the speed of light as being mutable. In other words, it is not a constant. Matter is matter, and it is matter no matter what dimension where we exist. But it's the speed of light, and that actually makes more sense from some of the work I've done, that energy is energy. Therefore, light can travel at different speeds. And before I bring up something like the Alcubierre model of space travel, and I have books up here about how to build starships. Our problem is right now we can't build a container strong enough to withstand the forces that are involved in that kind of travel. And in another form, thinking is the best way to travel. So everything is possible.
That's the song from the Moody Blues, isn't it?
That's my favorite group of all time. I grew up with them and I won't change.
Me too.
But I wanted to ask you then, because this has turned into to me, a very incredible interview. What would you plan, since you are recording this, to do with it? Are you going to take it and put it on your YouTube channel, or what would you like to do?
Well, we will have the other interview, the real
Yes.
one, where I don't know where you will ask me questions. And then, if I've repeated there everything I've said now in a better way, then that's it for that. I'm not going to use it. But if we have discussed things here that I've explained in a certain way that, we haven't touched or talked about again in the real interview, I might take some of bits here and there or excerpt and add them at the end of the main interview, or make a second video out of it, of the best part, where I explain certain concepts, and so maybe I won't use it, maybe I will. I have never edited a video before. This is my first time recording myself. I had to figure out how this camera worked.
Well, you've done an excellent job, and I've played with these settings before. And what you said to me, here's why I wanted to ask you. Once you finish recording, it becomes available to both of us in the chat column.
Yes,
YouTube.
yes.
And
But
with
I might not use this. I'm
okay,
recording as well on my camera, and that's 4K, and so the quality is much better. I'm more likely to use this, but the camera isn't recording you, unfortunately. It's only recording me.
oh,
So I'm not sure if I do this. I'm not sure how I will do it, basically. But I might not use the one that we're recording right now, or that is being recorded.
that's certainly your prerogative to do so since you initiated it. I'm okay with that. But once we take a quick view of the aftermath, um, being that you're viewing yourself in 4K on a separate camera, it would be a separate entity from this recording. I can tell you now, once you end the recording, and it takes a little while to accumulate on Skype, it will show both of us in this forest setting. And I find it very interesting as an introduction, just to put on Universal Digest, if you don't mind, and say this is an intro of an intro, introducing Roland. Should I say it properly? Your middle name, Tremblay. I just used Roland Tremblay right now. Yeah, I've always
Yeah, it's a Roland Michel Tremblay.
I didn't
Roland Michel. Michel is a very common name for man in the French world.
in
You know,
France.
Saint
Yeah,
Michael's, Saint Michel.
that's
Um,
why I didn't want to mispronounce it.
and it's
So
pronounced the same way. Michel for a girl with L-E, the Beatles song is the same thing.
instead
But
of EL, yeah,
I always say it the English way because otherwise people don't understand. I just say Roland Michel Tremblay,
right.
but it's Roland Michel Tremblay, so I don't mind. When they ask me, it's Roland Michel Tremblay.
Well, then I find this fascinating, and I know the viewers would as well, that I can encompass this even as an intro because it's gone so well. That's why I'm asking your permission once we.
Yeah, yes, go ahead. If you want to put the whole thing, maybe I'll do the same thing. Maybe I'll put it as well. Maybe you'll feel that maybe we don't need to have a real interview after that.
Actually, no, I think this basically, because of you taking this action, I find it mesmerizing because looking at it in the place of a normal viewer that would not have the knowledge that you certainly possess, and that I've accumulated over time, always being interested in physics, that I think it's a great introduction. That with giving you the fanfare in Universal Digest, we could place it in the article upcoming, which I've promised to do for you, that I want to, and even more so now that we've had this chance to discuss this. I find the fact of the speed of light not being constant and electrons having the energy of expansion and contraction, um, it makes sense because of some of these studies I've conducted with individuals that have experienced being with other beings that have exotic ships, if we want to call it that. In one case, the person I interviewed, Jim, when he met Ava, the being said, well, where would you like to go? He was on the ship for 4 hours. She invited him there. He said, let's see the moon. 2 seconds later, they were at the moon.
Because they shrank there. As
He-
simple as that.
and the
By just changing the vibrational rate, the frequency at which the all the neutrinos and electrons are, orbiting around each other and around the atoms and molecules, you shrink yourself or you expand yourself to where you want to go because there is no distance in the universe. And find me another theory of everything or anyone else in physics today that can explain to you how this is possible, that there is no distance and you can actually move somewhere else instantly. And some people, some species of aliens, they take forever to get somewhere, or they move at the speed of light or a few times the speed of light. Some others seems to move instantly. It's you can see that the level of knowledge changes. And at this point, with these theories and these two books, New Age Physics and The Final Theory by Mark McCutcheon, we can maybe reach a point where we know more than certain species, and uh, and our slavery, because I'm pretty sure some of them seems to be enslaving us right now, probably for the lower dimensions, but they seem to have access to our dimensions and higher dimensions too. And that's why they move in slow motion, and their plans are very long term because they got plenty of time to come up with ways to enslave us.
that's a very good point, and some of my latest studies has actually been involved with Sasquatch, learning more about the truth of the Sasquatch phenomena, and they are truly interdimensional and have powers, and they have ships as well. And I've learned from some people recently who are just fascinating. And I just joined another group this morning to learn more. Is that life? You and I both agree. This universe is teeming with life of all kinds. And
Apparently, every planet or solar system is
it,
inhabited by interdimensional beings. Every single planet
uh, that's fascinating. And Roland,
and the sun.
no, I really am honored that you are willing to take this further, because I'm all about, during my lifetime, and my purpose is to get the message out. And higher vibrations are being talked about a lot more than they have in the past, which in your case, these higher or lower vibrational patterns can be involved with instant travel as well. Uh,
Not only that, but also time travel.
Time travel. And
Yeah,
Roland, may I share something with you that I've developed over the years
yeah.
that I had to ask myself, and I've made it public for many years, so it's free to use because it's who I am. Time travel is real, both past, present, and future. The universe is teeming with life, so I had to ask, what makes life fair? Well, we are eternal beings, number one. Number two, we are just beginning to scratch at the surface as the human race of becoming higher dimensional beings because of our understanding and willingness to grow. But we have to grow in the one constant that exists in the universe, which is called love. And whether you identify it as God, metaphysically speaking, or anything else, to me, that's the truth. Being eternal, things change, matter changes. We're living, in a finite body that will change over time, but we don't spiritually.
I can explain something from my ideas anyway, my theories. I think, and this is just like all the esoteric religions mention, these etheric bodies. I think we've got more than one body. I think that this is the physical one, and I think we've got one in higher dimensions,
Yes.
and we've got one perhaps also in lower dimensions,
Hmm.
and when we die, the one in higher dimensions or lower dimension continues without us, without this form in this dimension. So, and I think that if we are not limited to our physical body here in a third dimensional world or third density world, we know much more. We are aware of much more as eternal beings, as you say. But we are limited when we are in this form. And it's very interesting that when you go into higher dimensions and go back down to now, you forget. It's just like exactly like if it was for a dream. You've got to really concentrate what just happened there. You have to remember. So if you ever go to higher dimension, you're better to record everything that happens. Make notes, of what you've done while you were there, and then once you come back, so you can see what happened, because
Well,
you would have forgotten. And so
I,
it's
so
more a limitation of our bodies. And people who are more intelligent and people who are less intelligent or more slow motion, it may be just a limitation of the body. It's like if you had a mental health issue, suddenly the connections are not happening in your brain. You may be very intelligent otherwise, but you may be slow motion. It's exactly what happened with dyslexic people. If you give them more time, they can achieve anything, and they can be geniuses as well. It's like maybe not, but maybe they can. So it's I think we're a small limitation of the body. And if you've got a body that works perfectly and is completely healthy, then lucky you. You can probably use all your abilities and potential. But beyond that, we're all the same. We're all much more knowledgeable, intelligent, faster, and everything. And time probably becomes meaningless outside our world here on the third dimensional world, because if you can constantly move between dimensions and where the time suddenly runs much faster or much slower, then time becomes meaningless. And not only that, but it seems that, right, that's quite something big to explain. But uh, actually, I haven't explained anything.
Well, no.
There is so much to go, and these are very difficult to explain without reading the books or without seeing the images that goes with it. But you know, when I say that all the matter expands constantly, and for example, the solar system is expanding all the time, the orbit of all the planets is constantly enlarging around the sun. And so we can't see that because we're expanding as well with everything else.
Mhm.
And with this expansion everywhere, everything expands at the same rate everywhere. I think, and all the time. And that's the first expansion and contraction of matter type. And so, gosh, I'm losing my mind.
No,
Apologies,
it's okay.
vaccines I received.
Keep opening doors, and we keep expanding on what we're discussing and all of the hard work that you have completed. And for people that don't know about book writing, it can be absolutely overwhelming at times. So,
Yeah. Oh,
uh,
yeah. The absent-minded of the sciences that is too self-absorbed in his work that was made famous in Tintin. There's always this lunatic scientist or
and
the like. Well,
as an aside, Roland, the fact is that some or very few in, say, our related communities might expand on Jean-Paul Sartre's matter, no exit, or looking at things from we're light on a stage routine, and that's not what we're talking about here. And I wanted that to be clear because it might be 1 out of 100 who view it that would say, well, wait a minute, are we really real? Well, yes, we are all very real, but we're just beginning to understand. And with your work, you're right, it's unique. I've not found it anywhere else, in what I do. So that's why I'm very
so
honored.
I remember now what I was trying to say
Okay.
is that the solar system is expanding like all particles are, like galaxies, and we can't see this expansion, but this is why the distance between everything is reducing, and it's all happening behind the scene. But what I meant to say is that there is still, so all this process, the fact that it does expand a little bit more all the time, and that actually in real time, it's an expansion that we can see, that actually happens, really, it really happens. And that's why the Earth in the old days, the time of the dinosaurs, for example, was much smaller than today. And all the continents together form one smaller ball, and it
Mhm.
was much more dense. And then this ball, in time, got larger and larger, larger. So you can see that everything grows in time. Us, the planet as well, but you can see it better on the millions of years. And there were no oceans then. And gravity was less, and that's why the dinosaurs could be so big and so large, and these kind of pterodactyls could fly, defying the laws of gravity.
Mhm.
Because if the planet is smaller, now gravity depends on size of the objects. And if the planet is smaller, it expands much less or less fast than actually if it's larger. So the gravity is much less. It's like the distance between two objects will reduce faster if you've got a massive object like the sun, and or if you've got a marble doesn't expand that much proportionally compared with the sun. So the distance does not reduce faster. That's why the larger the object, the more the attraction, or the faster that the distance reduces. So like gravity was less in the past, and the planet was smaller as well. And what I meant to all of this was about time travel. So it seems that as time goes by, matter always vibrate a little bit faster, 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 faster. And so depending on exactly the right frequency that your matter seems to be orbiting at, the right resonance, if you want, you would find yourself not only, anywhere else in the universe instantly, but also at a different time in history, either the past or the present or your future, or anywhere else as well. So every place, everywhere in the universe, at any particular time, has got a specific resonance, and each of these places at different times is its own dimension. And to get to this dimension, some people can just think of it oh, I want to remember when I was at my wedding, for example, 35 years ago, and and poof, you remember exactly what happened then. You went through your imagination, but you can go there physically as well.
Mhm.
Sometimes for psychic medium, for example, they find themselves there, or you're visiting a castle, you find yourself in the past, you can see these people. So, but you could also, maybe other species like aliens can actually travel to the past. We've seen photos of UFOs that disappeared the 1950s and reappeared 30 years later at the exact same location. I think it was in Washington or something. So, so it's very strange, but it seems that not only you can move anywhere in the universe, depending on the exact resonance of the matter that at which it all orbits and the frequency, you can also travel in time, which is very interesting. And in my book, there are examples of that.
Excellent.
To describe this. And you can see that time would be meaningless if, as I say, if we were to move in all dimensions, and time will go run faster, will run slower. But at the same time, you could never really, so it's a very interesting idea. Can we predict the future? If your time is going faster and you're on a higher dimension, can you see our future? And then can you come back in time and tell us what our future is? This was the book, the prophecies, the Mothman prophecies. There
Hmm.
was these beings, the Mothman, a bit like your Sasquatch, from other dimensions. Because they probably all their frequency or all their particles are orbiting slower. So they live in a different dimension, but very close to ours. And sometimes natural events or heat or power stations or electromagnetic fields phenomena can actually get all our mixed together our dimensions, and so they appear in our dimension and we exist side by side for a while, and so that's why they suddenly appear to us. And so in the moment prophecies, they could tell us events of our future, and the problem was that they were not very clear. They didn't want to tell us exactly how it happens or what was going to happen, and then you could only tell afterwards. Because if they were to start to tell us exactly what our future is, we could actually affect it. But I think
Well,
the idea is that we shouldn't be affecting it, or it should. You can see afterwards. You can perfectly see that this is what it applies to, and it did tell us about the future, but never enough to know exactly what will happen. And so. And this is all these black men, how are they called? My brain is gone. These black men, I think, men in black,
oh,
right?
okay. Men in Black.
These
Yes.
men in black, well, they seems to be turning everything to a ridiculous way. It's exactly what the Mothman prophecies is. They tell you a lot of stuff about the future. You tell everybody, and then you all turn to be right, and then everybody's listening to you. And at some point, they destroy your credibility. They tell you something that's going to happen. It's going to be big. You tell everybody about it, and then what happens is that it doesn't happen, or something opposite happens, and then you lose all your credibility instantly. So we don't look forward. Now we don't believe that guy anymore. That's exactly what the actor in Marvel Prophecies encountered. This guy who says that he says, I know the future, but I cannot do anything about it because I never know exactly if it will happen or not. And at the same time, it's still a potential future. Future changes all the time, but not just the future, but the past as well. And so the future can influence the past. It's always completely in motion. You
It's
can
it.
change as much the past as the future, and that's why they say in the esoteric literature or New Age literature that there is only an eternal present, because that's the only moment, this very moment in the present, that is exactly like it would ever be or always be for now. Because after that it's a fluctuating timeline. It's always constantly changed from one place to another, and that's why they say there is no time and everything is happening at the exact same time,
Mhm.
because depending on which dimension you're in, you can actually go back to the beginning or go back to the end. And it's constantly moving and changing. So this
That's what
is
they
a whole
call.
very interesting concept.
Yeah, they call that synchronicity. And the fact that I'm saying that things are getting better despite ourselves, really, because I consider my viewpoint as we're fine, we're saved. The model that we have seen now is if someone says, I want to go back and kill Hitler or something, and then they go back in time, but whatever change that they make in the past becomes the new future. Okay. And so nobody would have a memory of even who Hitler was if this person succeeded. And it can go much deeper than that. But I believe that all of these possibilities exist and everything occurs exactly as it should.
Yeah, exactly, like ideas, like dreams, and this is what reality is. It's and you know, the higher you go into these dimensions, the more intangible it becomes, if you want. But you know, because you don't see it with your five external senses of touch, taste, uh, um, eyesight. You know, it's you're
Right.
seeing more with internal senses, so it seems less tangible. But dreams are made of matter, like reality. It's made of electrons, atoms, molecules as well. But it just seems more unintangible because it's in our brain. It's more psychological. But there's no difference really, and that's what we need to understand. And there is no space. There's no real space in dreams or an idea or thought.
And, and many times our dreams are a manifestation, an extension of who we are and what we've experienced in a different format. But it's no less viable than what we experience in real time existence in life.
It's very interesting, dreams. You know, I've been breaking my head around what's their purpose or what they achieve and why. And I'm very happy that I'm into Jane Roberts, all her books, you know, and a lot of my theories. I got some ideas from reading that Jane Roberts, and so it's when you think of it, he's written a lot of books about dreams, and I look forward reading this. But it takes forever because there's so many books and they're so quite big. But yeah, maybe I'll find out more about that. But these are just other dimensions, basically, a dream or a thought, or some psychic mediums can see the thoughts of people. They see everything people think. They can see little images of them running around them. You know, Talbot, I can't remember his name. Michael Talbot, I think, was an author from New York or something. Wrote interesting books about reality where he describes that in his book. I mentioned it in my book somewhere.
Mhm.
The book is available, I think, somewhere on the internet. So
Oh,
you this, yeah,
okay, well, we're all interconnected, and everything happens for a reason. And when you're in the karmic phase of it being positive, then a positive result will always be achieved. So that being said, I would like to go into our next phase of interviewing at any time if you're choosing within the next week or whatever, where I will promise, which I am, to read the first three chapters at least of your book, and contrive some questions to ask based on what we've touched on today. And with your permission, I'll make this video that you've started, once completed, to be on Universal Digest for people to see and to become acquainted, so that when we develop the actual interview with the question answer base, we can then move forward to the article phase. And there are many friends that we have, globally, that would really be interested in this. And your work is unique. I'm honored to have been involved years ago to where you were building upon all this. And again, congratulations on getting your book completed.
thank you.
It's You're welcome, and I respect it because I'm going through it too. Do you have any ideas on how to properly put together an appendix? No, I'm just anyway. So
Yes,
uh,
I did wonder, should I put a biography into that thing at the end? Just like, can I be bothered with that, you know, on top of everything else? And would they freak if I don't, you know? And if we were at university, you know, if you dare not to put a bibliography, you would suddenly fail your grade, you know? It's like,
right,
but when you write your book, you know, you're free to do whatever you want. But I did include a biography, but I'm not
well,
sure if people would actually understand where I got the ideas from reading these books. You know, I do mention the books, but at the end, my brain works weird.
well,
I can get some ideas from things that aren't even related to physics. You know.
I really am happy we're reconnected too. From our first meeting, just so the viewers would know, I was disagreeing with you in the very beginning, and you were so eloquent to help educate me and to bring me up to speed. And again, being so unique, um, this is your life, a lot of your life that you put this together. And so, bottom line is, I am totally happy and honored to touch as many lives as we can with your theory. And I appreciate your trust in me.
Oh, no, thank you. It's my honor or my privilege. Anyone interested in these theories, I need to give them time of day because there are not that many. It's very difficult to reach out. So, anyone interested, I must spend the time to try to answer any questions they might have, or give interviews to everybody. Also, yes, it is the work of my life, a lifetime kind of book. It's the one I always wanted to write that I finally finished, and I was so tired at the end of it that I couldn't even celebrate or feel anything about it. It was like finally that thing is out the door. And it's like it can be bought anywhere now in the world in any bookstores. You can order it, or it's on Amazon, it's on Barnes and Noble, and it's like, but I can't celebrate or feel great about it, and especially that I still have two other books now, Anna Maria and Destructivism, the Path to Self-Destruction, to do the same process to get them out the door. The ebooks are already for sale, but not the printed books. But very interesting when you said Randlesham, your book. I thought, to write a book about Randlesham today, after all the books that have been made and all the
Right.
documentaries, I thought you really have to have something new. And then I realized that you have actually talked with these generals and people who perhaps I've never talked before. You kind of found them, and they tell you more details and more information. That's quite interesting, and
Uh,
I look forward to seeing what this
Thank you.
would look like.
Thank you. And it was actually a two-way street. I was on one radio show, and I'm sure David won't mind, in England, and David Young introduced me to Colonel Charles Halt, retired, and that was kind of like my final contact, to which I have been in contact indirectly and directly with just about all the casting characters of the event. And my focus has been more on what happened not only during, but there was activity beforehand and definite activity afterwards. And so my first article of the book, and now I'll make that public, will be my first Rendlesham article that I wrote, where it's a good introduction and it's a good expose for people to grasp a little bit of understanding if they don't really know the history. My second part, it's well over, like you were saying about your book, everything combined, I've got well over 250,000 words. So I've had to compress that a bit to around 80. And my second article is by itself over 40,000 words. So putting that in as a compilation, because I want to be fair with people who approached me out of the blue and trusted me to be an investigative journalist, an investigative writer, to cross-reference and to bring to the readers um, facts and honest observations of what really happened to these people without embellishing it, and in some cases not even protecting the nuances of the English language that contains bad words, because I found that in some cases I couldn't really change the text or syntax or anything else because it would take away from the essence of that subject at hand. So, yeah, I
Well,
know.
writing a book is a million decisions, choices, that is constant and it never ends. And many people start writing books, but not that many finishes them, or finish them. And so that's why sometimes you meet great writers, but that's not what you need. Perhaps is someone with the determination, the enthusiasm,
Absolutely.
capable of putting the time and actually finishing the book. And I've been lucky because I've wrote lots of books in my life. Nine published in France in French.
Mhm.
Because I'm from Quebec,
Right.
uh, but I do live in England. But so it comes easy, but it was hard work. It takes forever. and suddenly you think of a new idea. Oh my God, it's a new chapter. This would put me back a few months. It took me forever. But I think this is it. I think that this book probably could have a real impact in the world.
Well,
Energy. We were talking about energy earlier. Energy is now just the movement of matter,
mhm,
electrons, either in clusters or clouds. Electromagnetism, for example, or static electricity, or kinetic energy, the impact of a moving object can have on things. So that's the real type of energy. It can have a real impact, but it's just a different way to explain or to see what we have already seen. At the end of the day, you can still say, okay, we still have energy. It's just like a different way of saying it. These are all models, but these models might be better than what we've already have, or explain things better, or suddenly now it makes more sense and lead to more new discoveries. That's the idea.
I
So
think I believe this can all work hand in hand. And finally, I'll just briefly bring up the Alcubierre model of the scientist in Mexico who developed faster than light travel in the format which is very much the same as what you're saying about the expansion theory. To have a craft that really doesn't move, it contracts the space in front of it but expands the space behind it, and it actually can visit.
yes, but no, this is only possible within Einstein. This is exactly what the Star Trek Enterprise and Star Trek is doing, warping space. But only within Einstein is space like a sheet of rubber that is pliable. Time space is kind of an entity, but not in atomic special theory. Space is space, time is time, mass is mass, energy is energy. The only link between mass and energy, they are not relative anymore. A mass that goes very fast simply has more kinetic energy, meaning it will have more impact when it hits something.
Mhm.
So that's the only link. And you know, in particle accelerators, when these particles are going extremely fast and they are reaching, as they say, 99.999 the speed of light,
Mhm.
you know, it's not because they're becoming too massive and they can't be pushed back. It's that they are being pushed by, electromagnetic fields or electricity, which is just clusters of electrons or clouds of electrons, and their maximum speed is around the speed of light because
Right.
that's the speed they get at when they are ejected outside the atoms and the molecules. So they cannot push that mass further. But if you add if you want to do it in a very classical way, a spaceship that can go faster than the speed of light, it's very easy right now. We can do it. You just need a mean of propellant or a method to propel a ship all the time, constantly for a very long time. And it doesn't have to be very fast. Even being pushed by light from the sun is sufficient. And if there is always a constant push, gradually you can get your speed to several times the speed of light, and that's not a problem as long as you do it gradually. Otherwise, the g forces will crush you. But so that's the idea. And we could reach a star that is 20, or a solar system that is 20 light years away, very fast, because we could go probably at 4 times the speed of light just by constantly accelerating gradually. And then, at midpoint, then you start decelerating
So,
gradually,
right. I brought
until you reach
up.
the point. Oh, sorry, there's something interesting here that I
Oh
needed to
yes, yes,
say
please.
about this traveling faster than the speed of light. That there's no, because the speed limit was only because of Einstein, because his way of seeing space-time interconnected together with mass energy. But if Einstein is now gone from our science, there is no speed limit. Oh yes, I understand. I remember now what I wanted to say. This How would you see light if you are going at 4 times the speed of light? Is a
Right.
very interesting concept, an idea, because people say, "Oh, but I will be blind. I could not see because the light will not arrive to me." I already mentioned it earlier, but it's better that I actually explain it better. Yeah, light, when it is produced at the origin or the source of the light, at that point there are clusters of electrons that are getting out of there and travel in all directions. And if you are going towards that beam of light, or these beam of light, I mean clusters of electrons, which are light, which are things you can see, you are basically encountering them as you travel in space. So even if you're going at 4 times the speed of light, you will encounter these clusters of electrons and you will be able to see. But since you are encountering more and more often, you will see fast forward if these events that you're observing are happening at 4 times less, just under the speed of light. So that's why it's all relative, the speed of light.
Right.
And so it's relative to your direction of motion, to where the distance you are at, how fast you are going at. So, and this is gravity that is mixed into all this, because that's what gravity is. It's these clusters of electrons are from the origin of the light coming towards that ship, and the distance being separate, they're reduced as they expand, and also the ship is moving and they are moving, and so it's very difficult now to actually measure the real speed of light, but it will get to you no matter your speed, whether you are going
Mhm.
lower than the speed of light or even faster than the speed of light. So that's why you would still see. So that's a major difference that from Einstein. So that's an interesting idea I wanted to put out there.
No, and I did this on purpose. There was method to my madness, um, because your uniqueness of the fact that the speed of light is not constant, and everything still fits within that realm as clusters of electrons, whereas Einsteinian theory stops where mass achieves the speed of light; it becomes energy. And what you're saying is that doesn't happen at all. And I agree from my viewpoint that energy is energy and mass is mass. Um, they can be mutable, but that's not what we're looking at right now. And that's your expansion theory. And then after I read and conduct a few minor questions for our next step, I believe it will be even more understandable to people. But I really appreciate you saving this video recording so that I can install it so for people to become introduced. Um, and once you save it and it starts loading, it'll take a few seconds on Skype. Um, I'd like to have a brief chat with you about our next step after you stop the recording.
All right. Okay. So I'll say goodbye now to everybody. Is that what you mean? Yeah. We finished. Yeah. Okay.
We're now saying hello, so please save this video and
Okay.
thank you for
And then we
sharing.
continue to speak. Okay.
That's
Let me
wonderful.
put. I think stop recording is here.